Hey, Jason here from Simply Swider. If your Samsung refrigerator isn't cooling properly, don't panic. I'm going to walk you through the exact steps to diagnose and fix it yourself. Here's the good news: 90% of these cooling problems aren't expensive compressor failures like most people think. They're actually simple issues you can tackle with basic tools in about 30 minutes. Before we get started, if you run into any questions, jump into our Facebook group. Links in the description. We've got thousands of people helping each other fix their appliances, and I pop in there daily to help out. Here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. Most folks think they've got a compressor problem or low refrigerant when their Samsung isn't cooling. But here's the thing: about 90% of the time, it's actually an airflow issue caused by ice buildup or a failed defrost system. Samsung's twin cooling design is great for keeping humidity separate, but it's also prone to retaining moisture that turns into ice and blocks your fans and vents. Real world breakdown: ice buildup on the evaporator is the big one. Dirty coils are super common. Then you've got fan motors, defrost sensors, and control boards. Think in layers: airflow first, then defrost system, then electrical components. We're going to diagnose in probability order, not just throw parts at it. So the number one culprit, and I'm talking about 40% of the Samsung cooling problems I see, is a massive ice buildup on your evaporator coils behind that rear panel. You'll know this is happening when you hear that loud whirring or buzzing noise. Sounds like a playing card stuck in bike spokes, followed by complete silence when the fan seizes up. I had this customer last month call me in a panic. Her French door Samsung was making this horrible grinding noise, then just went quiet and stopped cooling. Sure enough, we pulled that rear panel and found a solid block of ice encasing the entire evaporator assembly. Here's what's really happening. Think of your evaporator like a sponge wrapped in a blanket. Over time, that foam insulation blanket gets waterlogged and stops insulating properly. This means the defrost heater can't melt ice effectively, like trying to dry a wet towel with a hairdryer. Plus, Samsung's drain clip is too short, so that drain hole freezes solid like a blocked straw. You might see error codes 22E or 22C, which are fan errors caused by ice obstruction. Here's the test. Put your fridge in forced defrost mode by pressing and holding Energy Saver plus fridge or freezer plus lighting for about 12 seconds, then cycle to FD. If you hear that fan start spinning freely after some time, you've found your problem. Don't just replace the fan motor. That's the mistake I see all the time. The new fan will just freeze up again in a few weeks if you don't address the root cause. Next up, dirty condenser coils, and this accounts for about 20% of cooling issues. These coils are usually hidden behind a panel on the back or bottom of your unit, and they get coated with dust and pet hair. Your fridge will run constantly, the sides will feel excessively hot, and cooling capacity just gradually gets worse and worse. I remember this guy who had 3 cats. When we pulled that rear panel, there was literally a gray mat of fur so thick you couldn't see the coils underneath. His compressor was working overtime trying to cool down. This is a 15-minute maintenance fix that anyone can do. You'll need a vacuum with a brush attachment and maybe a flashlight. Important safety note: unplug your fridge first and let it sit for 5 minutes before starting. If you can move your fridge safely, you can handle this repair. Don't assume your compressor is failing just because your fridge runs hot. Clean those coils first and save yourself hundreds. About 15% of the time, you're looking at a failed condenser fan motor. This is the fan next to your compressor that keeps everything cool back there. When it fails, your compressor and coils overheat and cooling goes weak or stops entirely. You might see error codes 23E or 23C. The telltale sign is when your compressor is extremely hot to the touch and it's completely silent at the rear of the fridge. Had this lady call me because her fridge was barely keeping milk cold. Walked around back, compressor was burning hot, and that condenser fan wasn't moving at all, even though the compressor was running. Dust gets into the bearings and seizes them up, or the motor just burns out electrically. You can test this by checking if the fan spins when the compressor kicks on, and if you've got a multimeter, you should see DC voltage coming from the control board to the fan. Now, here's one that trips up a lot of people: the defrost temperature sensor or thermistor. This little guy tells your main board when to stop the defrost cycle, and when it fails or drifts out of spec, you get incomplete defrost cycles where ice just keeps building up. I'd say this accounts for about 10% of cooling issues. Here's how to test it. Set your multimeter to the ohm setting. That's the horseshoe symbol. At room temperature around 77 degrees, a good sensor reads about 5,000 ohms. Don't have a multimeter? You can grab a basic one for under 20 bucks. If your reading is way higher than 5,000 or shows zero, the sensor has failed and needs replacement. I've seen folks replace expensive heating elements when the real culprit was this cheap little sensor shutting the heater off too early. Moisture gets into the sensor casing and throws off the readings. It's usually a $15 to $40 part and pretty straightforward to swap out. Last major cause is inverter control board failure. Happens about 10% of the time, but it's tricky to diagnose. This board converts AC power to variable frequency power to drive your compressor at different speeds. When it fails, your interior lights work fine, fans might run, but the compressor sits there completely silent and your fridge gets warm. Here's the key. Check that LED on the inverter board located on the back of your fridge. Solid red light usually means normal operation, but if it's blinking, you've got an error code. Each blink pattern corresponds to specific failures like startup problems or voltage errors. I can't tell you how many times I've seen technicians replace a $600 compressor when the real problem was a $200 control board. Always check that LED code before condemning the compressor. The defrost temperature sensor, you're looking at somewhere between 15 and 40 bucks for this part. It's pretty easy to replace. I'd give it a 4 out of 5 on the DIY scale. This little sensor monitors your evaporator coil temperature to know when to stop the defrost cycle. When moisture gets in and causes resistance drift, it tells the board the coils are warm when they're actually still frozen. You'll see massive ice buildup on that back panel. Test it with a multimeter. Should read about 5 KO at room temperature, way cheaper than the heating element most people think they need to replace. The evaporator fan motor runs between 50 and 120 bucks, and it's about a 3 out of 5 for DIY difficulty. This fan circulates cold air from your evaporator coils throughout both compartments. When it fails, you get that loud playing card and spokes noise from the blades hitting ice, then silence when it seizes up completely. Here's where most people mess up. They replace the motor without fixing the ice buildup problem, so the new fan just freezes up again in weeks. Always address the defrost system first. Now, the compressor, this is your $300 to $600 plus nightmare, and it's definitely a 1 out of 5 for DIY, meaning don't try it yourself. This requires brazing and refrigerant recharging, which needs professional equipment and certification. Internal mechanical lockup, valve failure, or electrical problems can kill a compressor. But here's the thing, compressor failure is way less common than people think. Always test that start relay and inverter board first before condemning the compressor. All right, if you're dealing with faulty parts, let's talk about what you're looking at cost-wise and complexity-wise. Most of these repairs are definitely DIY friendly, and you're going to save yourself hundreds compared to calling someone like me out. Here's the breakdown on the main components you might need to replace. Now, before we wrap up, you can see right there on your screen some of the most common Samsung models that run into these cooling issues. Maybe you'll spot your own unit there. The RF28 and RF26 French door models are notorious for ice buildup problems due to insulation saturation and drain tube freezing. The RFG 293 series has a pattern of inverter board failures while the compressor stays healthy. Side-by-side models like the RS 265 are prone to defrost sensor drift that causes coil blockage. Don't worry about memorizing all these. The diagnostic steps we covered work across all these model families. Here's your action plan for Samsung cooling problems. Step 1. Run that forced defrost test I showed you to check for ice buildup. Step 2. Clean your condenser coils if you haven't done it in the last year. Step 3. Work through the defrost system components we covered. This systematic approach will save you hundreds compared to calling a repair tech, and you'll likely have your fridge cooling properly within an hour. Most of these fixes are well under 200 bucks in parts and can save you a service call that'll run 4 to 600 easily. Early warning signs matter. That loud buzzing fan noise is your canary in the coal mine for defrost failure. Address it immediately before the fan seizes and cooling stops entirely. If this helped you get your Samsung cooling again, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know which fix worked for you. Really helps other people with the same problem. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get this out to more folks who need to save some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.